Can a sim be a game? Can a game be a sim? Why do I hate the word Simcade? Let's take a look. So this year, we're going to be seeing a lot of great racing titles being released this year. We're going to be seeing Dirt 4, Gran Turismo Sport, Forza Motorsport 7, Project Cars 2, and a wide variety of other racing titles that are going to really flesh out this virtual racing world. However, one concerning trend I've noticed in the sim racing community is this wide adoption of this term, Simcade. And I've noticed it being used in a pretty derogatory way to sort of discredit some titles' racing accuracies. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about this element which I think is hurting us as a hobby in sim racing. In layman's terms, we have classified this term Simcade as a middle ground between a sim and a game. To sort of get an idea on that perspective, we need to look at what makes a sim and what makes a game. So let's take a look at the sim because that is one of the most easily described elements of our hobby. A racing simulation is a program that simulates real-world racing, commonly using mathematical equations and programming dynamic code to recreate a dynamic racing environment. Over the years, we've been seeing the level of fidelity of these simulations increasing exponentially until they're leaps and bounds over even what they were 10 years ago. Now we're seeing simulations recreating tire wear dynamically. We're seeing rubber being laid on the tracks. We're seeing dirt flung up onto the tracks. We're seeing fuel mileage accurately being recreated. And all of this is combining to simulate races at a level we couldn't even have imagined when sim racing was first invented in the late 80s and early 90s. On the flip side, games appeal to somewhat of a separate demographic. We are seeing them really simplifying the driving model in favor of other tasks. Let's take Burnout Paradise, for example. It was no means a sim. I'm just using this as an example of a game. In that game, you are having a very simplified driving model that is used in favor of performing insane stunts. You're using that in order to have these goals of smashing cars off the road, doing double barrel rolls, crazy stuff like that. The game doesn't abide by physics. You're not worrying about tire wear. You're not worrying about running out of fuel. You're just worried about getting smashed off the road by the next guy you tip off. And then there's that sort of awkward middle ground where we place titles such as Gran Turismo, Forza, F1, Project Cars, and so on. And we don't really know how to describe it, so we just lump it into this barrel that we call Simcade. And I honestly think that's doing these titles a disservice for the sim racing community. Sure, these titles aren't at the bleeding edge of realism. Sure, they're not simulating dynamic tire wear. They're not simulating rubber laid on the track, but they are actual simulations. They do incorporate mathematical equations into their factoring of vehicle dynamics. They are actually simulating the driving. And honestly, in some ways, they're simulating racing better than these hardcore simulations that we are holding so dear as of right now. Look at Assetto Corsa. We are regarding that as one of the top racing simulations, but racing rules aren't really properly implemented. But look at Project Cars. It is regarded as a Simcade title, and I will agree it isn't at the highest level of fidelity, but at least it does have racing rules properly implemented. Look at Gran Turismo, look at Forza. Sure, they aren't at the bleeding edge of realism, but they do have a more fleshed out racing ecosystem than some of the other titles. The term Simcade, in my opinion, is a major detriment to the sim racing community because we are really seeing these titles being tossed by the wayside when they do have valuable input. They do have some merit to them as a racing simulator. So I would say, instead of Simcade, let's try to find another term. We could call them a simulation, and then R Factor 2, iRacing, Assetto Corsa, and so on we could call them the hardcore simulations. Or I would also say a good term could be a gateway sim. The Gran Turismo series holds a special place in my heart because that was really what got me into this world of sim racing. Granted, I did start with Papyrus back in the late 90s, but I was 6 years old. I had no clue what the heck I was doing, but I really started gaining a grasp of the simulation side with Gran Turismo 3, and that really got me into the rabbit hole of racing simulations. So I would say a gateway sim could be a great term to describe this middle ground where we are seeing more realistic vehicle dynamics. We're seeing this grasp where you have to actually have a concept of what you're doing in the car, and I think that would be a better way than having a derogatory term and sort of enabling an elitist mindset in the sim racing world. So I'd like to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts on titles such as Gran Turismo, Forza Motorsport, Project Cars, Dirt, and so on? Let us know in the comments. Also, if you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below and help keep us on track. For the Sim Racing Paddock, I'm William Marsh, and you have a great rest of your day.